Grinch is a new animated film from Illumination Entertainment, and this is another adaptation of the Dr. Seuss book, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. We've seen it in the Chuck Jones animated special, we've seen it live action, directed by Ron Howard, starring Jim Carrey, and now we're seeing it starring Benedict Cumberbatch. The story is basically exactly the same. He hates the Who's and hates the Christmas spirit, and he's gonna take that from them because he decides, I'm gonna steal their Christmas when they're all asleep, so they wake up and they get nothing. You already know the story, and basically in this film, they're taking that story and padding it out to fit an hour and a half runtime so it can actually go to theaters. When it comes to Dr. Seuss books being made into movies, I'm not the biggest fan of them. The original How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Ron Howard, it's okay, I guess. It's not the worst of the bunch. That is actually The Cat in the Hat, which is a complete atrocity and is a prime example of Dr. Seuss gone wrong. Horton Hears a Who, I feel very similarly towards The Grinch. It's just kind of okay. I could care less about it, though. The Lorax, which is also made by Illumination Entertainment, not very good. I didn't really enjoy that film. I think it's, animation-wise, pretty beautiful, and there's a couple kind of sweet moments in there, but overall I think it kind of ruins the spirit of the Lorax, or kind of misses the point of what the book is about. So when I heard that Illumination was also going to make their own version of The Grinch, and then it was going to star Benedict Cumberbatch, little iffy on that, because Illumination, I've only really liked 3 of their movies, Despicable Me 2, and Sing. Everything else has kind of ranged from mediocre to pretty bad, so I wasn't really that hyped for this film. Sure, Benedict Cumberbatch, he's a fantastic actor, and I think he could do really well as the Grinch, but everything else about the film just doesn't seem like it's going to work. So I was walking into this film pretty bitter, not sure what to expect out of it, but really just dreading it overall, to be honest. I was really scared. But going into this film, what I kind of had to convince myself into doing was to completely divorce all good feelings I have for the original book and the original cartoon. Those two, fabulous, but I really needed to just separate myself from them because I already know Illumination's not going to make it that accurate. There's going to be a lot of new things that are going to pander to kids. The Grinch is probably not going to be as mean and abusive to his dog or to the Who's in general. So I really had to look at this film, get rid of the original Grinch that I already have in my mind, and just look at it as what it is. Illumination making their own version of the Grinch for the kids. And after seeing this film, yeah, the Grinch kind of acts like Gru, basically. Or, a better example, Squidward. They kind of had that same just kind of snarky attitude, not really mean or abusive, just more sarcastic and snarky with other people. But to be honest, walking out of this film, I didn't hate it. I honestly enjoyed it much more than I thought. Main reason being the Grinch's character, which I never thought I'd say, considering the fact that Illumination was making this, but I thought they did a pretty good job making a new version of the Grinch. As I said before, this isn't as mean and abusive as the original Grinch in the book and in the cartoon, and this definitely isn't the same as the Jim Carrey version in 2000. If I had to have an issue with the way they portrayed the Grinch in this film, is that his main motivation for wanting to steal Christmas isn't really as strong. In the cartoon, you understand, he's just so annoyed at everything. They have that long montage near the beginning, and even in the 2000 movie, whether you liked or disliked Jim Carrey's performance as the Grinch doesn't really matter, but what they did with that film is that they showed you how cruel his backstory has kind of been, how people have always kind of treated him terribly for being different and ugly to them, so that you get that sense, okay, I get why he's been isolated for so long, and then later on when he's down in the town and it seems like I'm finally being accepted by these guys, you have Jeffrey Tambor giving him the razor, reminding him of the cruelty, and that's when he kind of initially decides, I'm going to steal Christmas from them. It makes more sense because that's kind of striking him personally at his core. In this film, the motivation basically is, there's a 2-minute scene where the Who's are putting up a really big tree. It's the biggest tree they've ever had, and they're putting up all these shiny lights and ornaments, and the Grinch is like, oh, that's so annoying. So he has this kind of slapstick routine where he tries to take down the tree, and it goes wrong, and he goes back home, and he's kind of like, oh, I'm so annoyed. I know what to do. I'm gonna steal their Christmas, and that's kind of it. Them putting up a tree, I don't see that as a personal strike at his person or anything like that. Just kind of, oh, I'm so irritated at this tree, I guess I can steal Christmas now, whatever. So as far as that characterization of him, his motivation, not a big fan of that, but what I really liked about this Grinch is that they actually made him much more relatable than I ever would have thought, because the plus side of making the Grinch not as mean and abusive, making him a little bit more snarky and just kind of silly, is the fact that they really get to work well with this new backstory where he wasn't necessarily bullied or anything, he was just always alone. He was pretty much living in an orphanage all his life, always by himself, and whenever he thinks of Christmas, he just thinks of how he's been alone and everyone else has had their families to go to. So mentally, it's like the Grinch has kind of taught himself to always dislike Christmas because it reminds him of how lonely he is, so he's also tricked himself into being by himself all the time. I might be looking too deep into this Illumination film about the Grinch, but I found that just very impressive of them, that they took the Grinch and actually made him more relatable to all the audience members, so that several moments throughout the rest of the film, you see these moments where you're like, oh, the Grinch doesn't want to be mean or anything, he's a little mixed up down here and up here. And I really like the way they portrayed the Grinch in that sense, and I really like what Benedict Cumberbatch was doing with his voice. Like, he was honestly a very perfect choice. Like, I loved him. But the most surprising part about this Grinch is the fact that near the end of the film, don't judge me, I started to tear up. If you've seen the ending to the original, you kind of know how that goes, but in this film, they take that original ending and they kind of drag it out so that it works best with this structure, and the way they had a certain character do something, and then they also had the Grinch say something, just everything about the way they decided to end this film kind of got to me, and I was like thinking back on the rest of the film, looking at how the Grinch has progressed, and I was like, yeah, this works best for the character. I started to tear up a little bit because what the Grinch was saying was also pretty relatable. It's something that struck at me personally, at my core. And I was like, oh my god, Illumination, you have heart? Why don't you have more heart in your movies, Illumination? So overall, I was really surprised at how they portrayed the Grinch, because it is different than what you've already seen before, but it also works best in what version they're making. And I really enjoyed it overall. Yes, you can tell this film is padded out, like there's a lot of stuff that's basically just a bunch of slapstick sketches kind of just stitched together to make a story, but I wasn't really hating them either. I was just kind of watching it, kind of enjoying myself. A couple moments that had me chuckling. I wouldn't say I was like on the floor laughing or anything, but I was chuckling. I was never really hating this film. I guess the closest I got to really hating it is whenever they cut to Cindy Lou Who, to be honest. I like the idea of her wanting to do something good for her mother, even though it is very cliched that she's single, all alone at home, and she's doing like karate kicks so the toast can not hit the ground in time. Like, if you've seen family films with a single parent and you see them do like karate moves in the kitchen, it's that. It's a little cliche and dumb, but I kind of like that idea of Cindy Lou Who doing something nice for her mom. But the majority of her screen time is dedicated to her hanging out with these other kids. One of them has just got a lollipop in his mouth, like pretending to smoke it, basically, and they all talk like they're gonna kidnap Santa, and they're the tough kids, so they're gonna do this. Like, I wasn't the biggest fan of that. But other than that one subplot, I really wasn't hating myself watching this film. For example, Kenan Thompson, I was worried that his character was gonna get annoying. He had me laughing pretty consistently. I really like the way they kind of wrote his personality in this film. Kenan Thompson did a really good job playing that character too. Like, his voice basically is what makes him work overall. There's also like a surprisingly funny moment involving these Christmas carolers that are like hunting down the Grinch because he was avoiding them earlier. Like, there's like surprisingly funny moments in this film. I won't say that everything about this film comedically works, but for the most part, I was chuckling a bit, and there are a couple moments that actually I thought were pretty funny. But as I said earlier, there's also certain moments of heart in this film. Like, they have this fat reindeer with them. I think, what do they call him? Fred? I think that's what they call them. At first I was thinking like, okay, when I go into this movie, this character is going to be like the new addition that's going to stay around the longest. He's going to be goofy. And actually, I was kind of amused with Fred. But also I was very surprised with how they treated Fred, because he doesn't really stick around for too long because of a spoiler reason, but what I was really surprised at was how they took this animal that I thought they were going to make it more comedic reliefy, but instead made it a point to address how the Grinch is kind of feeling, like address the Grinch's emotions. And I was just sitting there thinking like, oh, that's a really sweet moment. Like, I really like that. Like, there's certain moments in this film where Illumination isn't just blindly pandering to kids or promoting a product or anything like that. Like, there's like genuine heartfelt moments in this movie. I couldn't believe it. And of course there is pandering in this film. The end credits that come immediately after that ending that I told you about, The song they played, not the biggest fan, and it doesn't really fit with the rest of the film's music choices, because a lot of this film actually does have like classic kind of orchestra music, but then you have that end credit song, and it doesn't really fit. Also, the Grinch song by Tyler, the Creator, that plays early in the beginning also doesn't fit, and it's also just a cringy song. I don't know why they couldn't just get someone to actually sing a cover of the original, or just play the original song. I also don't know why they wanted Pharrell to narrate this movie. Not that he was bad or anything, but his voice just isn't like a narrator voice. Like, it's very, like, listen to the movie, like, his voice just doesn't really work as a narrator for me. I need someone whose voice is a little bit more transportive. You know what I mean? That might be a really weird criticism, I'm sorry. So yes, this movie definitely has its issues. Cindy Lou Who's storyline, not the biggest fan of it. The music choice is a little off at a couple points. Pharrell as the narrator, not the best choice that they could have had. A couple jokes, not the greatest. And you can tell that this film is padded out so they can make it unnecessarily an hour and a half long. But if I'm being honest, I had a good time watching it. Like, Benedict Cumberbatch works really well as the Grinch's character. I like the Grinch more so than I thought, to the point where I might be looking too deep into the character that they made. I liked how he interacted with the character of Max. I liked the animation. It's gorgeous. Whoville looks spectacular. The score by Danny Elfman I thought was real good, and there are a couple moments that I thought genuinely were pretty funny. Near the end of the movie, I was kind of debating myself, okay, this is like either like a strong C+ or like maybe low B-, what I think, and then as soon as it got to that ending and it actually managed to get me to tear up a bit, unexpectedly so, that's when I kind of decided, okay, the grade I'm giving it is a positive one. I can definitely say that this is a decent film that isn't as bad as I was expecting it to be. I'm gonna give The Grinch a B-. There's definitely a lot of fun to be had if you are a kid. If you're a kid, you're gonna probably love this film, but even if you're an adult, you could probably watch this movie and be like, okay, I love the original cartoon and the book, and obviously Illumination isn't gonna make a masterpiece or something that properly adapts the book or anything, but this has a nice message, it's pretty fun, and Benedict Cumberbatch is doing a good job as the Grinch. Surprisingly, I'd recommend this film. If you see Ralph Breaks the Internet first, or Creed 2 first, or Widows first, literally any other great movie first, but after you've seen all those great movies, I think you could actually see this film and actually be kind of surprised by it, maybe like me. Or not. I don't know. But if you've seen The Grinch, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.